Hello. The topic for our honors project that we decided to do was capitalism. We chose this because capitalism is very prevalent in our society and has been throughout history, and as you can see, each one of us took a different mode of inquiry to explore capitalism through, and this is our project. Thank you for watching. Hello, this is Maya, and as my part of the project is the textual analysis, I kind of wanted to make mine sort of like a book review and recommend you 3 books that you can read to help explore the concept of capitalism in American society and its history. So first we start off with The New Deal, written by Fiona Venn, and this book was written by a teacher. And as we know, the New Deal was implemented by FDR and during the Depression and the Second World War. And so this book explores the New Deal and throughout its beginnings and its ultimate demise in society. And so one of the quotes that they say is, "The reliance upon the states, although inevitable given the Constitution, was a significant factor in limiting the New Deal's impact." So this shows how the programs that were designed by the government were on the whole difficult to implement and were rejected due to this unbalanced relationship between businesses and state handouts. And as in the Great Depression, the economy was being very disrupted. They were trying to find this balance. And so now we have this idea of, and a huge population of people without jobs and with many of their life savings gone. So another quote they write is, "Given the current controversy, particularly in the U.S., about the disability or otherwise of workfare, it is important to emphasize that the impact of providing work rather than direct welfare payments was a positive one." So from this quote, you can see how in capitalism and the idea of this traditional society that we had in the 1940s, handouts and social programs was an idea that had such a negative connotation because people in society were looked at to just work, and you don't need to be reliant on that. And so we have this idea where all the programs that they were trying to implement, such as rations, and then we have how they pushed Thanksgiving a week back because to give businesses more time to sell before Christmas. And so this becomes this unbalance and this need between the businesses and the state to work with each other to try to find the correct balance and trust within society that it's okay to accept these social handouts while also supporting yourself through your business and through your work. And so this book overall explored the New Deal and its entirety to analyze it and help you understand how this truly was impacting modern capitalism and the current society. The next book we have is called The Age of Reagan, A History, 1974 to 2008 by Sean Willens. And I would say this is a really unbiased look at the overall presidency of Ronald Reagan in all aspects. However, what I took away from it for this topic and this project was the idea that there was this need and this relationship there was this major distrust from the public they had towards the government. And so Ronald Reagan was truly trying to build back trust and build back a better relationship between the state and the population and its businesses. And many people during this time period, were not really willing to have that relationship. And so throughout this, we see economics and the capitalistic system become such a partisan issue and create this divide within society. And the last book I have is called Capital in the 21st Century by Thomas Piketty. And this truly shows modern day capitalism in its like finest. And we have one of the most talked about ideas. When you think of capitalism right now, you think of progressive tax and how there's this push towards a progressive tax on capital, and for the rich, you see like eat the rich and many quotes like that. So in this book, one of the quotes that they say is, a progressive tax on capital is a much more suitable instrument for responding to the challenges of the 21st century than progressive income tax, which was designed for the 20th century, And so we have this idea, and I think now in the past and in the last two books, you see how it does throughout it, social issues and finance issues were somewhat mixed, but now we truly have, and you see how it's come full circle and come to a point in which social issues become so tied with economic issues, and we have this taxing and we have this system built against poor people. And so now when it becomes whether or not you can eat just to live, or whether or not you should pay this or eat this week, it's come to this point now where people are really unhappy with that system. And so this book kind of shows this relationship that people have. So in conclusion, these three books give you a baseline knowledge of capitalism and its history throughout the United States. And ultimately, knowledge is power, and the more you learn about this topic and the more that you explore it, the better understanding you can have of our current economic system and society. Thank you.
Hi, it's Ria. So my mode of inquiry was the scientific and mathematical analysis. Regarding capitalism, I'm going to touch on 3 different topics, and the first one includes the opinions of Americans regarding capitalism. I'm also going to be discussing the different wealth gaps within America, including the lower class, middle class, upper class, and the rich 1%. And the last thing I'm going to be discussing is how much Americans are making annually versus what they should be making. So starting off with what Americans think about capitalism, about 65% of Americans have a positive view on capitalism, and 24% of them say that it promotes individual opportunities. Those that are in favor of capitalism mention that capitalism has advanced America's economic strength and that America was established under the idea of capitalism, so they want it to stay that way. Lastly, they believe that capitalism is essential to maintain their freedom within the country. An opinion from a 66-year-old man, and he states that America has done more than enough to raise people out of poverty than any other economic system, and capitalism encourages innovation, invention, and growth. However, there are several other people in America that disagree with the idea of capitalism and see that it's an imperfect system that can cause economic corruption. A 69-year-old man in America said that capitalism seems like it's a beneficial system, but he doesn't believe that capitalism is strong enough and doesn't have enough limitations to avoid a negative side like income and wealth having inequalities. He believes that there are too many benefits for the rich and a lack of adequate safety net. Overall, the research about Americans and what they think about capitalism is split, but the majority of the people in the country do believe that it's a good system. Moving on to the different wealth gaps within the United States, in the 1970s, this chart shows how the lower class made $20,000, the middle class made $58,000, and the upper class made $126,000. In 2000s, things slightly increased from the lower class, and they made $28,000. The middle class also increased to $81,000, and lastly, the upper class substantially increased to $192,000. In 2018, things barely moved for the lower class, and their annual salaries only go up to a $500 shift after 8 years. The middle class also moves up a little to $86,000, and the upper class raises to $207,000. Within this chart, it shows that there has been no financial progression over the last 48 years, but the rich keep getting richer. In an article in October of 2021, it discusses how 60% of American households hold less assets than the top 1% of Americans. The top 1% of Americans have a combined income of $36.2 trillion, and this includes the annual income of 1.3 million households. that are estimated to make $500,000 annually out of 135 million Americans. The top 1% of Americans have been making more money than the middle class since 1989. And a current representation of what capitalism is the richest man in the world, Jeff Bezos, who makes $210.4 billion. Regarding to what those were saying about capitalism and how they found it to be unfair, a lot of people discussed how capitalism is a source of evil in the world, and it's led to destruction of environmental and exploitation on a global scale. A lot of people also believe that capitalism and money has become so important that a lot of people do forget their manners and to follow the rule of law. And this includes Jeff Bezos, just because a lot of people aren't able to grasp how much money he genuinely has. He has so much money that he's able to give every American $600. This includes 329.5 million people. Not only that, but he would be able to give $25 to every person on the earth, and this includes 7 billion people. And even after he would give everyone $25, he would still have money left over. Lastly, moving on to how much money we should be making based on how much money we are making. The average minimum wage in America goes from $7.25 to $17.30. It all just depends on the cost of living in the state that you're living in. The minimum, if the U.S. kept up with its productivity rates, then the average person would be making a minimum wage of $24 an hour. And this would amount to at least $48,000 a year. And within a 2-person household, they would be making at least $100,000. However, this is far from the truth in what Americans actually make. Within a year, the average American will be making about $60,000 to $69,000. And lastly, only about 30% of Americans will make $100,000 within a household, and 10% will only be making $200,000 based on their wages. Overall, there are two different sides and beliefs behind capitalism, and I hope that the information that I provided was able to enlighten you guys with a scientific and mathematical analysis viewpoint on what capitalism is.
Understanding capitalism through a historical and cultural lens provides us with insight into the consequences of late-stage capitalism, what occurred in the past to make capitalism as polarizing as it is in modern society. Capitalism is shown through comparison and context to have negative impacts on race and technology, more broadly our modern-day capitalist experience. To know about the history of capitalism, we need to start at the beginning, the father of capitalism, Adam Smith. Who was this man, and how did he propagate the idea of capitalism into a developing country? Adam Smith, an economist born in 1970, was most famously known for his writing, particularly The Wealth of Nations. Through his work and study, he provided a tempting economic format for the better of the people. Adam Smith created the invisible hand metaphor, perpetuating the idea that if we work and produce in our own self-interest, then a positive social and economic output must be created. L. Newbert, graduating from Rutgers University with a doctorate in entrepreneurship, explores Adam Smith's impact on modern capitalism, saying that due to the undue focus on the latter of these two works, modern economic thinking has become dominated through the belief that the pursuit of economic self-interest alone will engender the greatest social warfare. Using Newbert's analysis as a tool for exploring Adam Smith's impact on modern capitalism, it is easy to see how human selfishness and the promotion of self-interest created an abuse of self-interest, to the point where positive social and economic outputs are impossible through the means of capitalist personal interest. How did this economic theory create such negative consequence? When the intersection of slavery and capitalism came about in the United States, capitalism became a vessel in which helped racism spread throughout the country. Capitalism is about competition. More positively put, innovation. But this competition is not about innovation. It is about who can make the most profit. Low prices and cheap labor make for a rich man. Therefore, through the means of slavery, cheap labor and employee exploitation was possible in a blooming country. Scott Reynolds Nelson, a professor of history at the University of Georgia, bravely states that capitalism was more than a competition, but market competition allowed slavery to succeed. Nelson provides an easy-to-understand insight into the relationship between slavery and capitalism. This same relationship can be seen through the prison-industrial complex. The U.S. Constitution states, neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as a punishment for crime whereof the party shall have been duly convicted, shall exist within the United States or any place subject to their jurisdiction. Prison labor is a form of slavery, as it pays little to no money and is subjectively handed out. Black people today are incarcerated for small crimes and put in jail when white people would just get a warning. The high rate of black incarceration is how the U.S. continues to benefit and profit from slavery, to create even more competition due to their exploitative labor. The last element that describes but does not encompass capitalism is the cultural phenomenon of media consumption and technology. The development of technology has led to many unwanted circumstances, like, as Robert Heilbronner has said in his work called Social Research, the conversion of manufacture to machinofacture. Heilbronner heavily researches the influence of technology and sociological consequence. As industrialization progressed, rules had to be quickly developed in America to maintain safe working environments. Since the beginning of industrialization, humans have been treated more and more similarly to machines. Progressions in law can't and won't catch up to the speed of technological advance. Conclusively, the capital produced by technology and its efficiency will always hold more value than workers in the eyes of the rich man. Their economic self-interest, as Adam Smith previously told us, is first, including over humans and their quality of life. When these pieces of history come together, they form a clearer image as to how the intersection of economics, race, class, and even more come together to build our history and our future.
Hi, this is Reggie, and my part of the project was art, and I decided to talk about political cartoons throughout history, and I tried to choose 3 different time periods to represent the differences that they each brought. One's from 1911, another is from 1972, and I chose a more modern one from 2018. So the first one is called The Social Pyramid by Nicholas Lukov, and it was inspired by his own previous Russian art piece in 1900, and that was of the poor supporting the rich on their backs, saying, "The time will come when the people in their fury will straighten their bent backs and bring down the structure with one mighty push of their shoulders." Although a big difference is in the Russian political cartoon, there's a black eagle at the top of the pyramid, and he changed it to a money bag to represent America in 1911. In the American 1911 version, he also labels every layer with a universal saying that specific group lives by to represent their roles in America. On the ground level, it is the working class, and it says, "We work for all, we feed all." And they are shown carrying the entire pyramid. One person is even passed out on the ground. The word "we" is purposely used to show that only those on that level are the ones putting in all that work for everybody else. The second layer, which is the higher middle class / the socialites, says, "We eat for you." This sentence is meant to represent how the goods made on the first layer are being consumed and enjoyed by the layer above them. The third layer is the military layer, saying, "We shoot at you." They're supposed to be the ones who protect their people, but instead just benefit off of the first layer and abuse their power. The fourth layer is religion, which back then held a lot more power than it does now. But it is another demographic that abuses their power and lives off of the working class. The fifth layer is the government / royalty layer. They directly get all the benefits from all the layers below them. For example, the working class does the manual work for the economy that they don't want to actually do. And they use the military to protect themselves, but not the rest of the society. Lastly, on top of the pyramid is a money bag, because money is what drives everything in America, and it is considered to be above everyone else, and that is what everyone else is chasing. The second political cartoon is by Alan Hardman, and it's called "Don't Get Between Me and My Profits." It's a representation of what the powerful will do and ignore in order to gain more and more profits. Alan Hardman is a socialist who is determined to expose the hardships of capitalism through art. In the early 1970s, he did a 6-year apprenticeship at Printworks in Barnsley, his hometown, after he served 2 years in the artillery in North England. He says it is the best political education a young socialist could get, since it is firsthand experience with capitalism. He said it only made him keener. In the drawing that he did, you can see a wheelchair being thrown with the words, "If you can't walk, crawl," near it, as well as a baby in medical need with the words, "If you can't breathe, choke," around it. This is a symbol about the medical disparities in capitalism. Doctors and equipment are and will always be expensive. That's why it is not free to have medical care in capitalism, because they would be losing money to save lives that they don't care about. You can also see in the top middle a poor, frail-looking couple with the words, "If you're hungry, starve," near them. Again, the main character of the cartoon is a pretty full-looking older man. This is done on purpose to show that he has more than he needs, but is still greedy to take it from other people, even when he knows they are suffering without those necessities. Over time, political cartoons started making their way into memes as well, just like how art started off as pretty pictures to represent one's creativity, but then was used to show opinions. Memes went through the same path. It was first used for humor, but now you can find political memes that are still funny but have opinions attached to it. This picture from 2018, this picture came from a normal Shutterstock photo in 2017, but then it exploded on Twitter and it became a very known meme original. The words are simple, but it represents a problem that has been addressed for hundreds of years in all countries before and after America. Using the sentence, "people's effing lives," with the girl that the guy is holding hands with, and then America being the guy looking away, eyeing profit. It's similar to Allen's political cartoon from 1972 and Lokoff's from 1911. There is an overall and seemingly timeless message that the rich and powerful do not care about the poor and middle class, but will instead use them. It is also interesting to see how different artists represent capitalism through their creative eyes. Every piece has little details about them that you only notice the longer you look at it. And others are simple but still convey a strong message. And that is what is good about art, is you can do anything with it.
Thank you so much for watching. If you have any questions, please ask. Thank you so much.